My name is Rebecca Wilson, and I'm 28 years old. I never thought I'd walk into my own apartment and find my sister Megan lounging on my couch like she owned the place. I stood frozen in the doorway, suitcase still in hand from my business trip, as she smirked at me. "Mom said I could stay here," she announced casually. She gave me the spare key and everything. I was still processing this invasion when a sharp knock cut through the tension. The property manager, Mr. Reynolds, stood outside with a concerned expression that made my stomach drop. Before I dive deeper into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family members who think your boundaries are just suggestions. Trust me, what happened next will make your jaw drop. To understand why finding my sister in my apartment felt like such a violation, you need to know about my family dynamic. I've always been the responsible one. While most kids were enjoying summer breaks, I was working part-time jobs from age 16. I paid my way through college with scholarships, student loans, and by working almost full-time hours at a coffee shop. Every achievement came through my own hard work and sacrifice. Megan, on the other hand, is my parents' golden child. At 25, 3 years younger than me, she's never held a job for more than a few months. My parents paid for her entire education at a private university, which she dropped out of twice before finally graduating with a degree she's never used. They bought her a car when she turned 18, replaced it when she totaled it a year later, and continuously bail her out of financial troubles. Our mother, Diana, has always had an inexplicable blind spot when it comes to Megan. No matter what Megan does, Mom finds a way to excuse it or, worse, praise her for it. "Your sister is just free-spirited," she'd say when Megan failed to follow through on commitments. Or, "Megan's just finding herself," when she quit another job because she wasn't feeling it. When I got straight, as in high school while working weekends, Mom barely acknowledged it. When Megan managed to pull a B, average with a private tutor Mom hired, there was a celebration dinner at an expensive restaurant. Dad, Robert, is more complicated. Sometimes I catch a look in his eyes that suggests he sees the unfairness, but he never stands up to Mom. He's the definition of a passive enabler, quietly writing checks to support Megan's lifestyle, while occasionally telling me he's proud of my independence in private moments when Mom isn't around. The apartment that Megan had now invaded was my sanctuary. After graduation, I lived with 3 roommates in a cramped place for 2 years, saving every penny I could while working my way up from administrative assistant to office manager at a marketing firm. When I finally had enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on my own place, it was the proudest day of my life. Mom's reaction? "It's so small, Rebecca. And in this neighborhood? Couldn't you have found something nicer?" That's been the pattern my entire life. When I announced my promotion at work, Mom immediately asked why I wasn't pursuing a master's degree like Megan was talking about doing. She never actually applied. When I mentioned saving for retirement, Mom laughed and said I was wasting my youth worrying about being old. Last Christmas was particularly painful. I'd saved to buy Dad a watch he'd been eyeing. Megan gave him a card with an IOU. Somehow, I was the one who ended up feeling awkward when Mom praised Megan's thoughtful gift while barely acknowledging mine. 3 weeks before I found Megan in my apartment, she had broken up with her boyfriend, or rather, he had broken up with her after she maxed out his credit card. During a Sunday dinner at my parents' house, Mom had hinted heavily that family should help family in times of need. I explicitly told them all that while I sympathized with Megan's situation, my apartment was too small for 2 people, and I valued my privacy. Mom gave me that familiar disappointed look, the one that used to devastate me as a child. "You've always been so selfish with your things, Rebecca. Ever since you were little." The irony being that as a child, I was forced to share everything with Megan, while her things remained strictly hers. My toys became our toys, but Megan's toys were off limits because she was sensitive and needed her own space. I never gave anyone permission to give Megan my spare key. That key was left with my mother for emergencies only, after I had surgery last year. I had actually asked for it back twice, but Mom always had an excuse for why she didn't have it with her. Looking at Megan sprawled across my couch, using my Netflix account, wearing my bathrobe, it was clear that the boundary violations of my childhood had followed me into adulthood. And now, with the property manager knocking at my door, those violations were threatening the home I'd worked so hard to create for myself. I opened the door to find Mr. Reynolds, the property manager, looking uncomfortable in his button-down shirt and khakis. He glanced over my shoulder at Megan, who was now standing in the middle of my living room with a defiant expression. "Miss Wilson, I've received complaints from several neighbors about noise and a new tenant in your unit," he said, making air quotes around the words, "new tenant." "As you know, your lease explicitly prohibits unauthorized occupants. All residents must be on the lease and pass a background check." Before I could respond, Megan stepped forward. "I'm her sister," she said dismissively. "Family visits are allowed, aren't they? Or is this some kind of prison?" Mr. Reynolds' expression tightened at her tone. "Extended stays beyond 2 weeks constitute an unauthorized tenant situation, Miss Wilson. Your neighbors reported moving furniture in yesterday and mentioned the person said they were living here now." My heart sank. Megan had been telling people she lived here now? I turned to her in disbelief, but she just rolled her eyes. "Your lease is at risk of termination if this situation isn't resolved," Mr. Reynolds continued. "I'll need to know your plans to rectify this unauthorized occupancy by tomorrow." After he left, I closed the door and faced Megan. "You need to leave, now." She laughed as if I'd told a mildly amusing joke. "Don't be ridiculous, Becca. Mom already said it's fine." "Mom doesn't own my apartment," I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "I pay the rent here. My name is on the lease. Mom had no right to give you my key or permission to stay here." Megan's face transformed from amusement to anger with frightening speed. "You're really going to do this? Throw your own sister out when I have nowhere to go? After everything our family has done for you?" That everything was rich coming from Megan, who had been given everything while I had worked for every scrap I had, but I knew arguing that point was useless. "I'm calling Mom," I said, pulling out my phone. "Go ahead," Megan smirked. "She's the one who told me to come here." My mother answered on the third ring. "Rebecca? Is everything okay? You never call on weekdays." "Did you give Megan my spare key and tell her she could live in my apartment?" I asked, getting straight to the point. There was a brief pause before Mom's voice came back, defensive and slightly scolding. "Your sister needed a place to stay. That apartment is plenty big enough for 2 people, despite what you claim." "Mom, you had no right. Family helps family, Rebecca." She cut me off. "Honestly, I'm disappointed that you're even calling me about this. Megan is going through a difficult time." "I'm going to be evicted," I shouted into the phone. "The property manager just came by. Unauthorized tenants violate my lease." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Mom sighed. "Nobody gets evicted for having their sister stay with them. You're exaggerating as usual." The gaslighting was so familiar it made my head spin. According to my mother, my feelings were always an overreaction, my boundaries always unreasonable, my achievements always less important than Megan's needs. "I gave you that key for emergencies," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "not so you could move Megan in when I was out of town." "It was an emergency," Mom insisted. "Megan needed a place to go. What was I supposed to do? Let her be homeless?" "She could have stayed with you and Dad," I pointed out, "or one of her many friends, or gotten a hotel with all the money she spends on designer clothes." Mom's voice turned cold. "I see you haven't changed, Rebecca. Still the selfish little girl who wouldn't share her toys. Megan is family. She stays." After hanging up, I turned to find Megan wearing a triumphant smile. "Told you," she said smugly. "Now, I used your good shampoo. Hope that's okay. Also, you're out of coffee." I noticed then that the living room was already strewn with her belongings. My carefully arranged bookshelf had been partially cleared to make way for her collection of reality TV DVDs. My throw pillows had been replaced with her gaudy decorative ones. "If you tell Mom to make me leave, I'll make sure everyone in the family knows how cruel and selfish you're being," Megan threatened when she saw me surveying the changes. "Cousin Emma's wedding is next month. Do you really want to be the family pariah?" As if to twist the knife further, I discovered my favorite coffee mug broken in the sink. When I confronted Megan, she shrugged and said, "It was already cracked. It wasn't." My apartment, my sanctuary that I had worked so hard for, no longer felt like mine. And this was only day 1 of Megan's invasion. The next day, I took a half day off work to deal with the property manager. I arranged to meet with Mr. Reynolds at 2 p.m. to explain that I was handling the unauthorized tenant situation. When I arrived home at 1:30, I was shocked to find not just Megan, but both of my parents sitting in my living room. "What are you doing here?" I asked, dropping my keys on the side table with more force than necessary. "We need to talk about this ridiculous situation," Mom said, her voice sharp with disapproval. "Megan says you're threatening to make her homeless." "That's not I started, but Dad cut me off." "Becca, be reasonable," he said, using his placating voice, the one he always used when trying to get me to go along with something that benefited Megan at my expense. "Your sister needs help right now." "It's temporary." "How temporary?" I challenged. "A week? A month? A year? And did Megan tell you I'm about to be evicted because she's not on my lease?" "Nobody gets evicted for having family stay," Mom dismissed, echoing her words from our phone conversation. "You're being dramatic to try to get your way." "The property manager is literally coming here in 30 minutes to discuss the lease violation," I said through gritted teeth. Mom waved this off. "We'll talk to him. I'm sure he'll be reasonable once we explain the situation." Before I could respond, my phone pinged with messages. "Aunt Lydia. Family should come first, Rebecca. I'm disappointed in you. Uncle Paul. Your mother is very upset about how you're treating your sister. Call me. Cousin Stephanie. Wow, kicking your sister out when she's down? Cold." I looked up from my phone to Megan's smirk. She'd been busy. "I didn't tell them anything that wasn't true," she said with fake innocence. "Just that I had nowhere to go after Jason and I broke up, and you're threatening to make me homeless because you don't want to share your precious apartment." "That's not what's happening, and you know it," I snapped. "Rebecca Wilson," Mom cut in, her voice rising dramatically. "I did not raise you to be so selfish. After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Mom?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "I paid my own way through college. I work for everything I have. This apartment, that you're so quick to give away, I saved for 2 years to afford it." "Here we go again with the martyr routine," Mom rolled her eyes. "You act like we abandoned you on a doorstep. We put a roof over your head, food in your mouth." "The basic legal requirements of having a child," I interrupted. "Meanwhile, Megan gets cars, college tuition, constant bailouts." "Your sister has different needs." Mom's voice rose to a near shout. "You've always been jealous of the attention we give her." Dad sat silently, looking uncomfortable but offering no support. "Typical. Remember when you needed money for that school trip in 8th grade?" Mom continued. "We gave it to you." "No, you didn't," I corrected. "I couldn't go because you said it was too expensive. The same month, you bought Megan a $500 prom dress, even though she was only in 10th grade and wasn't even invited to prom yet." "That was different," Mom insisted. "That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." The conversation continued in this circular pattern, with Mom rewriting history and Dad occasionally murmuring vague, placating comments. Through it all, Megan sat back with a satisfied expression, adding occasional barbs like, "Becca's always been jealous of me, and I would help her if the situation was reversed." The doorbell rang, mercifully interrupting the ambush. Mr. Reynolds had arrived. To my horror, Mom immediately took charge, ushering him in with a warm smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Reynolds, we're so glad you're here. There seems to be a misunderstanding about our daughter's living arrangement." "Mrs. Wilson, I presume?" he replied professionally. "I'm afraid the lease is very clear. Rebecca is the only authorized tenant." "Yes, but surely family visits are permitted?" Mom pressed. "As I explained yesterday, extended stays beyond 2 weeks constitute an unauthorized occupancy situation," he repeated. "And based on what neighbors reported, this is not a temporary visit." Mom's smile tightened. "I think we can all agree that what happens in a private residence is subject to the terms of the legally binding lease agreement," Mr. Reynolds finished firmly. "I sympathize with family situations, but rules are rules. Either the second occupant applies to be added to the lease, which would increase the rent and require a background and credit check, or they need to vacate within 7 days." After he left, having given his ultimatum, the gloves really came off. Mom was furious that I had embarrassed the family in front of a stranger. Dad suggested I take one for the team and just let Megan stay, maybe sleep on the couch in my own apartment. Megan alternated between playing the victim and making snide comments about my obsession with rules. When I went to my bedroom to get some space, I found my closet door open and clothes strewn about. My personal filing box had been opened, papers disturbed, a cold feeling of violation washed over me. I returned to the living room and found Mom going through my mail that had been sitting on the counter. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Just seeing if there's anything important," she said without looking up. That's when I noticed my wallet wasn't where I'd left it on the side table. I spotted it open on the coffee table near Megan. "Did you go through my wallet?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Megan shrugged. "I needed to order food last night and didn't have my card with me. I was going to pay you back." I snatched my wallet and checked it. Sure enough, my credit card was missing. "Where is it?" "Relax. It's in my purse," Megan said casually. "I was going to give it back." I demanded she return it immediately, only to discover several transactions already made: food delivery, online shopping, and a salon appointment. "You spent over $400 on my credit card without permission?" I was almost speechless with rage. "She'll pay you back," Mom interjected dismissively. "Stop making such a big deal out of everything." "It's credit card fraud," I said flatly. "It's literally a crime." Mom's face flushed with anger. "Are you threatening to call the police on your own sister? Over a few purchases?" "What is wrong with you, Rebecca?" In that moment, looking at the three of them, Mom's self-righteous indignation, Dad's conflict-avoidant discomfort, and Megan's entitled smirk, something broke inside me. Years of being the family scapegoat, of having my boundaries violated, of being made to feel unreasonable for having basic expectations of respect, all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. "Get out," I said quietly. "All of you, now." Rebecca Dad started, but I cut him off. "Now, or I call the police and report the credit card fraud and the breaking and entering. Your choice." Mom stood up, grabbing her purse with theatrical movements. "I have never been so disappointed in you, Rebecca Wilson. If this is how you treat family, perhaps you don't deserve to be part of ours." The irony of her statement was almost laughable. As they left, Mom delivered her parting shot. "This isn't over. You will apologize to your sister and make this right." Little did she know, she was correct about one thing: it wasn't over. But not in the way she thought. After my family left, I immediately called my credit card company to report the fraudulent charges. The customer service representative was sympathetic, as I explained that my card had been used without permission. "We'll send you a new card with a different number," she assured me. "The pending charges will be investigated and likely reversed within 7 to 10 business days." Next, I checked my other accounts and was horrified to discover unusual activity in my checking account as well. There were 3 transfers to an account I didn't recognize, totaling nearly $1,200. My emergency fund, which I'd worked so hard to build, had been decimated. I called the bank and learned the transfers had been made online using my login credentials. My stomach churned as I realized Megan must have watched me enter my password at some point. I reported the fraud, changed all my passwords, and the bank promised to investigate, though they were less reassuring about whether I'd get the money back. With shaking hands, I filed a police report online for identity theft and unauthorized use of my financial information. It felt surreal to be typing my own sister's name as the perpetrator, but the violation was too significant to ignore. My phone exploded with texts from Megan. "Real nice, Becca. The card just got declined while I was buying dinner. Mom and Dad are furious with you. You're choosing money over family? Pathetic." I blocked her number. Within an hour, the flying monkeys were deployed. Relatives I barely spoke to began calling and texting, all with variations of the same message. I was selfish, heartless, a bad sister, a disappointment to the family. Aunt Patty, who I hadn't seen in 3 years, left a particularly vicious voicemail. "Your mother is in tears, Rebecca. How dare you treat Megan this way after everything they've done for you? Your grandfather would be ashamed if he were alive to see this." Meanwhile, I discovered Megan had been opening my mail. A letter from my company about an upcoming performance review had been opened and resealed badly. A cold feeling of dread settled over me. The next morning, I met with Mr. Reynolds to explain the situation and arrange for the locks to be changed. His expression was sympathetic but firm. "I understand family situations can be complicated, Miss Wilson, but this is precisely why we have clear lease terms about occupancy." "I know, and I apologize," I said. "My sister was given a key without my knowledge or consent. She's been removed from the property now, and I'd like to change the locks today if possible." He nodded. Our maintenance team can do that this afternoon. There's a $150 fee for lock changes outside of the normal lease cycle. It was money I couldn't really afford to spend after Megan's theft, but essential for my security and peace of mind. As we finished our conversation, Mr. Reynolds hesitated, then added, "Your sister came by the office yesterday claiming to be a co-owner of the apartment. She wanted access to the maintenance request system." My blood ran cold. "She what?" "Don't worry, we verified the lease and confirmed you're the sole tenant. But you should be aware she's making these claims." I thanked him for the information, my mind racing. How far was Megan willing to go with this invasion of my life? I took a personal day from work to deal with the financial mess, spending hours on the phone with banks and credit card companies. As I was finishing up the last call, my phone lit up with my boss's name. "Rebecca, we need to talk," Simon said, his voice unusually formal. "HR has received some concerning allegations about financial irregularities in the office management accounts." My heart dropped. "What? That's impossible. I'm meticulously careful with those accounts." "Nevertheless, we need to investigate. I'm afraid you'll need to come in for a meeting with HR tomorrow. Until then, your system access has been temporarily suspended." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Then it clicked. Megan must have called my workplace with false accusations. She was trying to destroy not just my home security and finances, but my professional reputation and livelihood as well. I broke down crying, the weight of the betrayal finally becoming too much to bear. I had always known my family dynamic was unhealthy, but I never imagined they would go this far to punish me for enforcing a simple boundary. As I sat there feeling utterly alone, my phone pinged with a text from Jessica, a coworker I'd become friends with over the past year. "Hey, heard about the HR thing. Sounds fishy. You okay? Want to grab coffee and talk?" I hesitated, then responded honestly. "Not really okay. Someone made false accusations. Long story involving my toxic family. Could actually use a friend right now." Jessica's response was immediate. "I'm coming over. Text me your address. And pack a bag. You can stay at my place if you need space from family drama." For the first time that day, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't completely alone after all. When Jessica arrived, she listened without judgment as I explained the entire situation. When I finished, her expression was one of horrified disbelief. "Rebecca, this isn't normal family drama," she said firmly. "This is abuse. Financial abuse, emotional abuse, identity theft, multiple crimes. Actually," she helped me gather evidence from my apartment credit card statements, showing Megan's fraudulent purchases, bank records of the unauthorized transfers, photos of my disturbed files and mail. "You're staying with me tonight," she insisted. "I don't think you should be alone, and honestly, I wouldn't put it past them to come back." As I packed an overnight bag, I found a handwritten list in Megan's handwriting hidden under the couch cushion. It contained my social security number, mother's maiden name, and other security question answers. With a chill, I realized this wasn't an impulsive act of revenge. My mother and sister had planned this sabotage in advance, methodically gathering my personal information to systematically dismantle my life. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, but as Jessica helped me load my essential belongings into her car, I felt something unexpected alongside the pain, a newfound determination to fight back. Jessica's guest room became my sanctuary over the next week. Her apartment was smaller than mine, but felt infinitely safer. She lived in a secure building with a doorman who checked all visitors, which gave me peace of mind that my family couldn't simply show up unannounced. "Stay as long as you need," Jessica insisted when I thanked her for the third time. I went through something similar with my ex, not family, but the same violation of trust and boundaries. No one should face that alone. On my second day there, I reached out to Tyler, a lawyer friend from college who specialized in family law. He agreed to meet for coffee during his lunch break. "What you're describing is actually several different crimes," he said after I explained the situation. "Identity theft, credit card fraud, mail tampering, which is a federal offense, by the way, and potentially breaking and entering since your mother used the emergency key for a non-emergency purpose without permission. I don't necessarily want to send my sister to jail," I admitted, feeling conflicted despite everything. "I just want her out of my life and to get my money back." Tyler nodded. "That's understandable. But you should document everything as if you were going to press charges, because that documentation will help you protect yourself going forward. He helped me create a folder of evidence, screenshots of the fraudulent charges, bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers, the police report number for the identity theft, photos of my mail that had been opened, and the list of my personal information I had found in Megan's handwriting. Start recording all phone conversations with your family members, Tyler advised. New York is a one-party consent state, so you don't have to tell them you're recording. I also met with Mr. Reynolds again, who confirmed that using the emergency key for a non-emergency purpose could be grounds for trespassing charges. He provided a formal letter stating that Megan Wilson was not an authorized tenant and had no legal right to occupy the apartment. Meanwhile, my mother's campaign of emotional manipulation intensified. Her tactics cycled predictably between rage, guilt-tripping, and fake reconciliation attempts. I gave birth to you, and this is how you repay me? After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is what we get in return? I'm not angry anymore. I just want us to be a family again. Call me back, Rebecca. Your sister is devastated. She was only trying to get back on her feet. I stopped answering her calls but saved every voicemail and text as evidence, following Tyler's advice. The meeting with HR at work was tense but ultimately went in my favor. The financial irregularities Megan had reported were easily disproven with documentation. My boss, Simon, seemed relieved. We had to investigate because of protocol, he explained afterwards. But between us, the allegations seemed suspicious from the start. Your work has always been impeccable. I didn't tell him it was my sister who had made the false report. Some family shame ran too deep to share in a professional setting. When I returned to my apartment to collect more clothes, I was shocked at the state of it. Megan had apparently returned after our confrontation and taken out her rage on my possessions. My favorite reading chair had a wine stain on the cushion. Several framed photos had been smashed. My plant collection, which I had carefully nurtured for years, had been neglected to the point that several were beyond saving. It no longer felt like my home. The violation of my personal space was so complete that even with new locks, I couldn't imagine feeling safe there again. As I was boxing up some undamaged personal items, my phone rang with my father's number. I hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker and starting the recording app as Tyler had advised. Rebecca? Dad sounded tired. This has gone far enough. Your mother is beside herself. Megan made some mistakes, but cutting off the family isn't the answer. Dad, she stole over $1,000 from me and tried to get me fired. She's young and impulsive, he sighed. She's agreed to pay you back. Eventually. Can't we put this behind us? The familiar pattern of minimizing Megan's actions while maximizing my supposed transgressions was so predictable it was almost comical. Has Mom admitted she was wrong to give Megan my key? I asked. Silence. Has Megan admitted that identity theft and credit card fraud are crimes, not mistakes? More silence. That's what I thought, I said. Until there's real accountability, there's nothing to discuss. Dad's voice hardened slightly. Your mother wants to meet, to clear the air. She's willing to come to you. Something about his phrasing set off alarm bells. This isn't a negotiation, Dad, and I'm not at my apartment right now. Where are you then? He asked too quickly. I realized with a chill that this wasn't a reconciliation attempt at all. They were trying to locate me. I need to go, I said, and hung up. Later that day, my neighbor Amy texted to let me know my mother and sister had shown up at my apartment, claiming they were there to surprise me and needed to be let in. Thankfully, the maintenance team had already changed the locks, and Amy had the good sense to refuse. They seemed really upset when I wouldn't let them in, she texted. Your mom kept saying she had a right to see her daughter's apartment. I told them you weren't home and they should call you. Hope that was okay. I thanked her profusely and added her to the growing list of people who had shown me more genuine care than my own family. That evening, Jessica helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter, which Tyler reviewed and approved. It outlined all the legal violations my family had committed and stated in no uncertain terms that any further contact would be considered harassment. You don't have to send it yet, Tyler advised, but having it ready gives you options. As I settled into Jessica's guest room that night, I found myself scrolling through social media and discovering my family's smear campaign had reached new heights. Megan had posted a tearful selfie with the caption, Family heartbreak is the worst pain. Some people choose money and possessions over love and loyalty. Pray for my sister to find her way back to what really matters. The comments were full of sympathy for her and condemnation for me from people who had no idea what was really happening. Relatives and family friends who had known me my entire life were quick to accept Megan's version of events without question. I closed the app, feeling a strange sense of calm descend. The reality of my family dynamic was laid bare in a way it never had been before. They weren't just occasionally difficult or somewhat unfair, they were actively malicious, willing to destroy my reputation, financial security, and career to maintain their control over me. For the first time in my life, I saw with perfect clarity that there was nothing I could ever do to earn their love and respect. The problem had never been me. As painful as that realization was, it was also freeing. I didn't need to keep trying to please people who were determined to be displeased with me. I didn't need to maintain relationships that brought only pain and betrayal. I fell asleep that night with a plan forming in my mind. I would no longer be passive in this conflict. It was time to take control of the narrative and my life. After a week of careful preparation, I was ready to reclaim my apartment and my life. Tyler had helped me prepare all the necessary legal documentation, and Jessica had rallied 2 more friends to accompany us for moral support and as witnesses. I had also arranged for a police officer to meet us there, explaining the situation involving identity theft and trespassing concerns. Officer Martinez was a middle-aged woman with a calm, no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed my documentation before we approached the building. "I understand this is a family dispute," she said, "but unauthorized entry and identity theft are criminal matters, regardless of relationship. I'm here to keep the peace and ensure there's no further illegal activity." We arrived to find, as I'd half expected, Megan had returned to my apartment. She opened the door with a look of shock that quickly morphed into outrage when she saw the police officer. "What is this?" she demanded, trying to close the door. Officer Martinez blocked it with her foot. "Miss Wilson, I'm Officer Martinez. I understand you're not an authorized occupant of this apartment. I need you to identify yourself and explain your presence here." Megan's face flushed. "I live here with my sister. This is ridiculous." I stepped forward, holding the property manager's letter. "No, you don't. You have never been on the lease, Mr. Reynolds has provided documentation confirming that I am the sole authorized tenant and that you have no legal right to be here." Officer Martinez took the letter and reviewed it. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation showing you have a right to occupy this residence?" Megan faltered, then rallied. "My mother gave me permission to stay here. It's a family arrangement." "Your mother doesn't own or rent this apartment," I said firmly. "She had no authority to give you permission." As if on cue, my phone rang, my mother calling. I showed Officer Martinez the screen. "That's our mother now. She'll likely be here soon." Officer Martinez nodded. "Miss Wilson, please gather any personal belongings you brought with you. You'll need to vacate the premises immediately." Megan's eyes filled with tears, the same performance she'd been perfecting since childhood to get out of trouble. "You can't just throw me out on the street. I have nowhere to go." "You can go to Mom and Dad's house," I said flatly. "The same place you could have gone instead of breaking into my apartment and stealing my money." Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow. "There's an identity theft report associated with this address?" I handed her a copy of the police report I'd filed online. "Yes, over $1,600 in unauthorized charges and transfers. I have the bank and credit card statements documenting everything." Megan's fake tears dried up instantly, replaced by fury. "You're really doing this? Having me removed by the police like a criminal?" "Identity theft is a criminal offense," Officer Martinez stated matter-of-factly, "as is unauthorized use of keys to enter property without the owner's permission." As Megan grudgingly began collecting her things, the doorbell rang. Jessica answered it, revealing my mother and father standing in the hallway. Mom pushed past Jessica without a word, then froze when she saw Officer Martinez. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, looking at me with pure venom. "You called the police on your own family?" "Mrs. Wilson," Officer Martinez interjected, "I'm here to ensure your daughter Megan vacates this apartment peacefully. She has no legal right to be here." "This is a family matter," Mom insisted, her voice rising. "We don't need police involvement. When family matters include identity theft, credit card fraud, and trespassing, they become police matters, Officer Martinez replied calmly. I stood my ground as Mom turned her fury on me. How dare you? After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By humiliating us in front of the neighbors? By treating your sister like a criminal? Megan is a criminal, I said steadily. She stole my identity and my money. She tried to get me fired. She damaged my property. These are crimes, Mom, not family squabbles. Dad hovered awkwardly behind Mom, his eyes darting between us and the officer. Rebecca, surely we can handle this privately, he attempted. I tried handling it privately, I reminded him. I asked nicely. I explained the lease violation. I told you what Megan had done. You all dismissed me, minimized the theft, and tried to make me feel crazy for having boundaries. As Megan continued packing, I had Jessica and my other friends help me document the damage to my apartment. They took photos of the stained furniture, broken picture frames, neglected plants, and other signs of Megan's vindictive presence. Officer Martinez supervised the inventory, occasionally making notes in her official report. You may want to include this documentation if you decide to pursue civil damages, she advised quietly. Mom overheard and scoffed. Civil damages? You would sue your own family? You've always been selfish, Rebecca, but this is a new low. Actually, Tyler stepped forward, introducing himself as my legal advisor. Miss Wilson has every right to seek compensation for the financial losses and property damage she's suffered. The documented theft alone exceeds $1,600, which makes it a felony offense in this state. The word felony seemed to finally penetrate my mother's righteous indignation. Her face paled slightly. You wouldn't, she whispered. I don't want to, I admitted, but I will if I have to. I want my money back, and I want you all to leave me alone. Megan emerged from my bedroom with a suitcase and several shopping bags. I've got my stuff, she announced sullenly. All of it? I asked pointedly, including my credit card and anything else that belongs to me. She rolled her eyes but pulled my credit card from her wallet and tossed it on the counter. Happy now? Officer Martinez stepped forward. Is there anything else you've taken that belongs to Miss Wilson? After some additional prompting, Megan surrendered my favorite sweater, a pair of earrings, and several makeup items she'd helped herself to. As they prepared to leave, Mom made one last attempt at manipulation. If you do this, Rebecca, you're no longer part of this family. Is that what you want? The question hung in the air. A year ago, even a month ago, it would have devastated me. But now, looking at the three people who had caused me nothing but pain and betrayal, who had violated my home, my finances, and my trust, the answer was surprisingly easy. If family means letting you abuse me, then yes, that's exactly what I want. Mom's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little… Mrs. Wilson, Officer Martinez interrupted sharply. I suggest you leave now before you say something you might regret. As they finally exited my apartment, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. The neighbors who had gathered in the hallway, drawn by the commotion, quickly dispersed, but not before I caught several sympathetic glances. One elderly woman patted my arm as she passed. Good for you, dear, she whispered. I've been listening to that girl's parties all week. You deserve some peace. After Officer Martinez left with a promise to file her report and contact me if there were any further developments, I surveyed my violated apartment. Despite the new locks and my family's departure, it no longer felt like the sanctuary I had worked so hard to create. You can stay with me as long as you need, Jessica reiterated, seeming to read my thoughts. Until you decide what you want to do next. Tyler added, and I've drafted the paperwork for a restraining order if you decide to go that route. Given the documentation we have, approval should be straightforward. I nodded, grateful for their support but too emotionally exhausted to make any more decisions that day. The confrontation had been necessary, but it had also been painful in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. That night, back in Jessica's guest room, I received a barrage of texts from extended family members, all expressing their shock and disappointment in my cruelty toward Megan. The family grapevine had clearly been busy, though I noticed the story circulating conveniently omitted the theft, fraud, and property damage. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. My mother's final threat echoed in my mind, "You're no longer part of this family." It should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt an unexpected lightness. For the first time in my life, I was free from the obligation to please people who could never be pleased, to earn love that was never really available to me. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, legal paperwork, financial recovery, decisions about my living situation. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, I allowed myself to acknowledge a simple truth. Standing up for myself had been painful but necessary, and I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. The relative calm lasted less than 48 hours. Monday morning, I woke to find my email inbox flooded with messages from extended family members. Aunt Patty had apparently appointed herself the family spokesperson and launched a full-scale campaign against me. Rebecca has always been jealous of Megan. She wrote in a group email that included nearly every relative I had. Now, she's having some kind of breakdown and making up horrible accusations. Diana and Robert are devastated. Cousin Emma, whose wedding was approaching, sent a private message. "I don't know what's going on with you, but Mom says you had Megan arrested? I don't feel comfortable having this kind of drama at my wedding, maybe you shouldn't come." I hadn't been uninvited from a family event since I was 10 and refused to give Megan my new bicycle, a rare gift from my grandparents, after she broke hers. My phone buzzed with a notification from my rarely used Instagram account. Someone had tagged me in multiple posts. I opened the app to find a newly created account under the name Truth About Becca with a single post, a carefully edited video compilation showing me arguing with my family during the apartment confrontation. The video had been filmed secretly, likely by Megan, and edited to show only the moments when I raised my voice or looked angry. The caption read, "When your sister values possessions over family and has a mental breakdown." Several of Megan's friends had already commented with sympathetic messages about how difficult it must be to deal with a toxic family member. I showed the post to Jessica, who was outraged. "This is defamation. Can you report it?" Tyler reviewed the video when he came over that evening. "It's definitely edited in a misleading way, but unfortunately, it doesn't quite cross the legal threshold for defamation. They're careful to frame it as concern rather than making specific false accusations. So, they can just spread this narrative about me having a mental breakdown, and there's nothing I can do?" I asked, feeling helpless. "Social media platforms have their own policies about harassment," he advised. "You can report it and see if they'll take it down. But honestly, engaging might just fuel the fire." The harassment extended beyond the digital realm. When I went to work the next day, my boss called me into his office again. "Rebecca," Simon looked uncomfortable. "HR received another anonymous call about you yesterday. This one claimed you have substance abuse issues that are affecting your work." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. "I want to be clear," he continued quickly. "I don't believe these allegations. Your work has been excellent, but company policy requires that I document that these claims were made and discussed with you." "It's my sister," I admitted, my voice tight. "She's retaliating because I had her removed from my apartment after she broke in and stole from me. I'm so sorry you're being dragged into this." Simon's expression softened with understanding. "Family situations can be complicated. Just know that your job is not in jeopardy, but perhaps you should speak with someone in legal about harassment." That evening, I returned to Jessica's apartment to find a small package had been delivered for me, forwarded from my address. Inside was a broken frame that had held a photo of my grandparents. A note in Megan's handwriting read simply, "Oops." The deliberate cruelty was staggering. That photo was one of my most treasured possessions. My grandparents had been the only family members who ever seemed to value me for myself. Then came the threatening notes. The first appeared under the windshield wiper of my car in the office parking lot. "Family secrets should stay in the family." The second was slipped under Jessica's apartment door somehow, despite the building's security. "You can't hide from family forever." I showed the notes to Officer Martinez, who had been helpful during the apartment confrontation. She documented them but explained that without direct proof of who left them, there wasn't much that could be done legally. "This is why restraining orders exist," she said sympathetically. "Have you considered filing one?" I had been hesitating, still struggling with the enormity of legally severing ties with my family. But the escalating harassment made the decision clearer. Through all of this, I found unexpected support from my neighbor Amy, who had witnessed some of Megan's behavior while I was away. She reached out to offer her statement for any legal proceedings. The way they were trying to get into your apartment was really unsettling, she told me over coffee. Your mom kept insisting she had a right to be there. When I suggested she call you instead, she said something like, Rebecca doesn't get to make the rules about family property. It struck me as really odd, since I knew you were the only one on the lease. Amy's perspective, an outside view of my family's behavior, helped validate my experience. Throughout my life, I had been told my perceptions were wrong, my feelings overblown, my boundaries unreasonable. Hearing someone else describe my family's behavior as disturbing was surprisingly powerful. The most unexpected blow came when my boss called me into his office again a week later, his expression grave. Rebecca, I'm concerned, he began. The CEO received a call from your mother yesterday. My stomach dropped. My mother called the CEO? How did she even get that number? Apparently she's quite resourceful, Simon said grimly. She expressed concern about your mental health and suggested the company might be liable if they continued to allow you access to financial systems during your breakdown. The audacity was breathtaking. My mother had never taken an interest in my career before, except to compare it unfavorably to Megan's perpetually imminent success. Now she was actively trying to sabotage it. This has gone too far, I said, my voice shaking. I'm so sorry you're being dragged into my family issues. Simon's response surprised me. Rebecca, I've known you for 3 years. You're one of the most level-headed, reliable people I've ever worked with. Whatever is happening with your family, I want you to know the company stands behind you. His support brought tears to my eyes. In that moment, the contrast between how my family treated me and how others in my life viewed me could not have been clearer. That night, I received a call from my father. After weeks of the silent treatment, I was surprised enough to answer. Rebecca, his voice sounded tired. This has all gone too far. Your mother is. She's not well. She's obsessed with this situation. Can't sleep, can't eat. I'm worried about her. The familiar pattern of making me responsible for my mother's emotions. I remained silent. I know Megan made some mistakes, he continued, but your mother just wanted to help her. She thought you would understand, since you're the responsible one. So, because I'm responsible, I should be fine with identity theft and having my apartment taken over? I asked. Dad sighed heavily. I'm not saying what happened was right, but surely there's a way to resolve this without restraining orders and police reports. We're family. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of the old longing for my father to stand up for me, to acknowledge the unfairness, to be the parent I needed, but his next words extinguished that hope. If you could just apologize to your mother for the way you handled things, I think we could put this behind us. I closed my eyes, a familiar heaviness settling in my chest. I'm not the one who should be apologizing, Dad. Rebecca. No, I interrupted, finding strength in the clarity of my position. I won't apologize for protecting myself from abuse. I won't apologize for having boundaries. And I won't apologize for holding Megan accountable for crimes she actually committed. There was a long silence before he responded, his voice colder now. Then I don't know what else to say. Your mother was right about you all along. The call ended, and with it, the last fragile thread of hope that my family might eventually understand my perspective. The next day, I filed for the restraining order. It felt like closing a door that had been slowly shutting my entire life. The small claims court date arrived with a mix of dread and determination. I had spent weeks preparing with Tyler, gathering evidence and practicing how to present my case calmly and factually. The key is to stick to the documented facts, he reminded me as we walked into the courthouse. Don't get drawn into emotional arguments or family history. The judge only cares about the specific financial damages and legal violations. My mother, father, and Megan were already seated when we entered, huddled together on a bench outside the courtroom. Mom glared at me with unconcealed hostility, while Dad stared at the floor. Megan whispered something to Mom, who nodded vigorously. The courtroom itself was less imposing than I had imagined, more like a conference room with a raised desk at the front, where Judge Martinez, no relation to Officer Martinez, just a coincidence, presided. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who started the proceedings by establishing the basic facts of the case. We're here regarding case number 2347B, Wilson v. Wilson, she stated. Rebecca Wilson is seeking damages of $2,347.83 from Megan Wilson for unauthorized credit card charges, bank transfers, and property damage. Is that correct? I confirmed it was, and then the real battle began. I presented my evidence: first, bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers, credit card statements with Megan's purchases, photos of the damaged property, and the list of my personal information found in Megan's handwriting. Judge Martinez reviewed each document carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "And you never gave permission for these charges or transfers?" she confirmed. "No, Your Honor. I discovered them after finding my sister had been given access to my apartment without my knowledge while I was away on a business trip." When it was Megan's turn to respond, she launched into the narrative they had clearly prepared. "Your Honor, this is all a big misunderstanding," she began, her voice taking on the vulnerable quality she had perfected over years of avoiding consequences. "My sister told me I could stay at her place after my breakup. She even gave me permission to use her card for emergencies. I was going to pay her back, but then she just freaked out." Judge Martinez's expression remained neutral. "Do you have any documentation of this agreement? Text messages? Emails?" Megan hesitated. "It was a verbal agreement. We're family, we didn't think we needed everything in writing." "And the bank transfers? Were those also part of this verbal agreement?" "Well, not exactly, but Rebecca has helped me financially in the past. It's just what sisters do." My mother interjected, despite not being called to speak. "Your Honor, my daughters have always shared everything. Rebecca is going through some personal difficulties right now and isn't thinking clearly." Judge Martinez fixed my mother with a stern look. "Mrs. Wilson, you'll have an opportunity to speak if called as a witness. For now, please refrain from interrupting." As the hearing continued, Megan's story began to unravel under the judge's precise questioning. She couldn't explain why, if there was a verbal agreement, she had made the purchases while I was away rather than when I was present. She couldn't justify why she had a list of my personal financial information, including my social security number and banking passwords. "Your Honor, if I may," a voice came from the back of the courtroom. Mr. Reynolds, my property manager, had arrived. I was subpoenaed to provide testimony regarding the apartment occupancy situation. Judge Martinez invited him forward. Mr. Reynolds presented a copy of my lease, documentation of the unauthorized occupancy complaint, and his own statement about Megan claiming to co-own the apartment. Miss Wilson, Rebecca Wilson, has been the sole leaseholder since the beginning of her tenancy. She never submitted any request to add an occupant, which is required under the terms of the lease. When I spoke with Megan Wilson, she claimed her mother had given her permission to live there, not Rebecca. My mother's face flushed with anger. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. When my mother was finally called to testify, her carefully crafted persona of the concerned parent quickly dissolved under questioning. "Mrs. Wilson, did you give your daughter Megan a key to Rebecca's apartment?" Judge Martinez asked. "It was a family emergency," Mom insisted. "Megan needed a place to stay." "Did Rebecca authorize you to give her key to someone else?" "I'm her mother. I don't need her permission to help my children." "Actually, legally you do," Judge Martinez corrected. "The key was entrusted to you for emergency purposes, not to grant access to third parties against the leaseholder's wishes." My mother's testimony grew increasingly defensive and contradictory. She claimed I had implicitly agreed to let Megan stay, then admitted I had explicitly said no. She insisted the financial assistance was just sisters sharing, then suggested I owed the family for years of support that was never actually provided. As my mother continued to unravel under the simple, direct questioning, I caught my father's eye briefly. He looked away quickly, but not before I glimpsed what appeared to be shame. After all testimony had been heard, Judge Martinez took only a brief recess before returning with her decision. Having reviewed all the evidence presented, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Rebecca Wilson. The defendant, Megan Wilson, is ordered to pay damages in the full amount of $2,347.83 for unauthorized financial transactions and property damage. She continued with a stern addendum. "I want to address something troubling about this case. Family relationships do not override legal boundaries or consent. Keys entrusted for emergency purposes do not grant authority to allow others access against the owner's wishes. Financial accounts in one person's name are not communal property, regardless of family ties." My mother made a sound of protest, which Judge Martinez silenced with a sharp look. Furthermore, she continued, "I'm concerned about the pattern of behavior described here, Miss Rebecca Wilson. I'm granting your request for a restraining order against Megan Wilson for a period of 1 year, to be reviewed at that time." Megan's face contorted with rage. "You can't do that. She's my sister." "I assure you, I can and I have," Judge Martinez replied calmly. "And further outbursts in my courtroom may result in contempt charges." As we left the courtroom, my mother attempted one final confrontation, stepping into my path. "You've destroyed this family," she hissed, her face twisted with anger. "I hope you're happy now." Tyler stepped between us. "Mrs. Wilson, your daughter has a restraining order against Megan, and I would advise you not to harass her further unless you want similar restrictions placed on yourself." The ride back to Jessica's apartment was silent, my emotions too complex to easily untangle. I had won, legally speaking. The judgment validated what I had known all along, that I had been wronged, that my boundaries were reasonable, that my family's behavior was not just hurtful but illegal. Yet the victory felt hollow in many ways. What I had really wanted, deep down, was not financial restitution, but recognition from my family that their treatment of me had been wrong. That recognition would never come. When I returned to work the next day, I was surprised by the supportive reception from my colleagues. Word had apparently spread about the false accusations against me, and rather than believe them, my coworkers had rallied to my defense. "We know who you are, Rebecca," my team member Jordan said simply. Nobody believed that nonsense for a second. The restraining order brought a blessed cessation of direct contact from Megan, though I occasionally heard through mutual acquaintances that she was playing the victim role to the hilt, collecting sympathy for being abandoned by her sister during a difficult time. My mother continued to send messages through third parties, flying monkeys dispatched to make me feel guilty or question my decisions. Each time I repeated the same boundary. "I'm not discussing my family situation. Please respect my privacy on this matter." Some respected this boundary. Others did not and were consequently removed from my life as well. The most surprising development came 3 weeks after the court date, when I received an email from my father, the first direct contact since our phone conversation. "Rebecca, I've been doing some thinking," it began. "I know things have been difficult, and while I don't agree with how all this played out, I miss having you in my life. Maybe we could meet for coffee sometime, just the two of us?" I stared at the screen, conflicting emotions washing over me. Part of me, the part that had always longed for a real relationship with my father, wanted to accept immediately. But the wiser part, strengthened by recent events, noted what was missing from his message. Any acknowledgement of wrongdoing, any recognition of the harm caused, any commitment to actual change. After careful consideration, I replied, "Dad, I appreciate you reaching out. I miss aspects of our relationship too. But before we can rebuild any kind of connection, I need acknowledgement that what happened was wrong, not just unfortunate or mishandled, but wrong. Mom and Megan violated my boundaries, stole from me, and then tried to destroy my reputation when I protected myself. Until there's recognition of those facts, and a genuine apology, I don't see how we can move forward in a healthy way." His response never came. 6 months after the court judgment, I found myself unpacking the last box in my new apartment. It was smaller than my previous place, but in a secure building with strict access policies. More importantly, it was mine, a fresh start untainted by the violations and betrayals of the past. The journey to this point had not been easy. After the restraining order was granted, my mother escalated her campaign of having others reach out to me on her behalf. Each flying monkey arrived with the same basic message. I was being cruel and unreasonable, my mother was suffering, family should come before petty disagreements. I had developed a simple response. This wasn't a disagreement. It was identity theft, fraud, and harassment. I'm not discussing it further. Most of my extended family eventually gave up, though a few surprised me by actually listening when I explained the situation. My cousin Samantha, after hearing the full story, was horrified. "That's not normal family behavior, Rebecca," she said, echoing what Jessica and others had told me. "I always thought your mom was strict, but I had no idea it was this bad." At work, my position had stabilized after the false accusations were disproven. In fact, Simon had recommended me for a promotion to senior operations manager, which came with a substantial salary increase. Your grace under pressure during the family situation impressed everyone, he told me during my performance review. Not many people could maintain such professionalism while dealing with that level of personal stress. The promotion had allowed me to afford the new apartment, which felt like a tangible symbol of my fresh start. Jessica remained a steadfast friend throughout the transition. I'm going to miss having you as a roommate, she admitted, as she helped me unpack kitchen items. But I'm so proud of how far you've come. I couldn't have done it without you, I told her sincerely. Having someone believe me when my family was trying to make me doubt my own reality, that meant everything. My therapy sessions with Dr. Liu had been instrumental in my healing process. She specialized in family trauma and had helped me understand that what I had experienced wasn't just ordinary family dysfunction but a specific pattern of scapegoating and narcissistic abuse. The golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic is particularly damaging, she explained during one session. It's not just about favoritism, it's about assigning rigid roles that serve the parent's emotional needs, rather than allowing children to develop as individuals. Understanding the pattern helped me stop blaming myself for my family's behavior. I hadn't been too sensitive, too selfish, too demanding, or any of the other labels that had been assigned to me throughout my life. I had simply been inconvenient, unwilling to play the role that had been scripted for me in the family drama. 3 months after our court date, I received another email from my father. Unlike his first attempt at contact, this one contained no request to reconcile, just an update that seemed designed to provoke guilt. Your mother had to start taking anxiety medication because of all this, he wrote. Megan lost her new job because she couldn't focus with all the legal stress. I hope you're satisfied with what your actions have caused. I showed the email to Dr. Liu during our next session. What's your reaction to this? She asked after reading it. 6 months ago, it would have devastated me, I admitted. Now I just see it for what it is, another attempt to make me responsible for their feelings and choices. She nodded approvingly. That's significant progress, Rebecca. Indeed, the most profound change wasn't external but internal. I no longer felt the crushing weight of guilt that had been my constant companion throughout my life. I no longer second-guessed my right to have boundaries or questioned whether I deserved basic respect. About a month after moving into my new apartment, I received a letter from Megan. The restraining order didn't prohibit written communication, though I had the option to report it if it was harassing in nature. I opened it cautiously, unsure what to expect. The letter contained no apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just a request for me to stop this nonsense because she needed her sister back. She concluded with, "Family is forever, Rebecca. You can't just decide we're not family anymore because of one little fight." One little fight. That characterization of what she had done, identity theft, fraud, attempted career sabotage, property damage, spoke volumes about her continued lack of accountability. I didn't respond. My new apartment gradually became a true home filled with friends, laughter, and new traditions. I hosted my first dinner party 3 months after moving in, inviting Jessica, Jordan, and his wife, Amy, from my old building, and a few other friends who had supported me during the difficult transition. To new beginnings, Jessica toasted, raising her glass. And to chosen family, I added, looking around at the caring, respectful people who had proven to be more family to me than those who shared my DNA. There were still difficult days, of course. Mother's Day brought a wave of complicated emotions. Christmas advertisements featuring happy families gathered around dinner tables sometimes triggered pangs of grief for the family I wished I had. Dr. Liu helped me understand that this grief was normal and healthy. I was mourning not just the loss of my actual family but the idea of family I had always longed for. The hardest part of estrangement for many people, she explained, is giving up the hope that your family will someday become what you needed them to be. But alongside the occasional grief came a profound sense of freedom. I no longer spent holidays dreading family gatherings where I would inevitably be criticized and compared unfavorably to Megan. I no longer exhausted myself trying to earn approval that would never be granted. I no longer contorted myself into smaller and smaller versions of myself to avoid triggering my mother's disapproval or my sister's jealousy. I was, simply, me, Rebecca Wilson, complete and worthy on my own terms. 6 months after the court date, I received notification that the full amount of the judgment had finally been paid. I had honestly given up on ever seeing that money, assuming Megan would find ways to delay indefinitely. The The payment came not from Megan but from my father, with no accompanying message. I used the money to finally take a vacation I had been dreaming about for years, a solo trip to Sedona, Arizona, where I hiked through Red Rock canyons, watched breathtaking sunsets, and spent peaceful evenings reading on the balcony of a small bed and breakfast. On my last night there, I wrote in my journal, "Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about respect, care, and genuine support. I lost the family I was born into, but I've gained the freedom to create the life and relationships I actually deserve." When I returned home, refreshed and renewed, I found an invitation to Jordan's upcoming birthday party. At the bottom, he had written, "The office family isn't the same without you, please come." I smiled at his choice of words. Family. The term had once been weaponized against me, used to justify violations of my boundaries and sense of self. Now I was reclaiming it on my own terms, recognizing that true family, whether related by blood or by choice, supports your growth rather than stunting it, respects your boundaries rather than trampling them, and loves you for who you are rather than what you can provide. As I prepare to leave for Jordan's party, I look around my apartment, my secure, peaceful home, and feel a deep sense of contentment. The journey here was painful but necessary, and I wouldn't trade my hard-won freedom and self-respect for anything. If you've ever faced toxic family dynamics, or had to make the difficult choice to distance yourself from harmful relationships, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did you find the strength to set boundaries? What helped you heal? Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose your own well-being, even when it means leaving behind relationships that no longer serve you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you deserve respect, kindness, and love, no matter what anyone else might tell you.